Hello, welcome. If you have been here before, welcome back. I appreciate you watching my previous videos. If you have not been here before, hello, welcome. My name is Bria. I am currently on a mental health journey for the first time in my 27 years of life, and I am sharing my experiences with you, the world, so hopefully maybe somebody doesn't feel as alone. So if you have watched my previous video, I kind of alluded to, I was talking to my psychiatrist about getting tested for something new. And obviously, I'm sure you've seen the thumbnail and the title of this video, but my therapist recommended I get tested for ADHD. I did, and it was positive. Yay! So yeah, I am just learning that I have ADHD, and a lot of my life is making more sense. So yeah, that's why we're here today. I don't plan on, cannot promise I won't, but do not plan on making this a video about my personal experience so far, or like what the symptoms are, or what my symptoms are, or like what really led me to decide I needed to do something about it. But I more so want this to be a video about what ADHD is. There's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of misunderstanding and misconception about the disorder that even obviously myself, up to my diagnosis and the research I've done before and after that, I also thought these things. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding involved with what ADHD is and is not. I think that we can all relate to thinking about the little boy who's just in his seat that won't sit still and can't pay attention, and like oh yeah, that kid has ADHD, he can't sit still, he's hyperactive. But it goes a lot deeper than that, and I didn't expect it, and it's fascinating. So yeah, that's what we're here to do today. And future videos will go more into depth with my experience and other aspects of the areas that we have difficulty with, I suppose. But today, we're here for an overview. So, ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, is a neurodevelopmental disorder that can cause difficulty with regulation of attention, executive function, and working memory. There are more areas that it impacts. It kind of impacts every single facet of your life. But those are the big three, I suppose. Oh, and my notes are right here. Just to warn you, kind of like last time, I don't have good memory recall. My short-term memory is kind of crap. So I apologize if I continue to look at my notes. I'm doing the best with what I got. My brain's not great. So here we are. So there are 3 subtypes of ADHD, and everybody kind of falls under one of the 3. There is the hyperactive impulsive subtype, which is hyperactive impulsive symptoms, including impatience, difficulty sitting still, hypertalkative, impulsive behavior. The list goes on. Again, this is what you would normally think of when you think that kid has ADHD. Just like restless, can't sit still. I obviously am fidgeting, so I have some hyperactive symptoms. But this is the umbrella that you usually put people under when you think that they have ADHD. The second type is the subtype that is lesser known about, and in fact, the umbrella that females generally land under, and it's the inattentive subtype. So the inattentive symptoms include limited attention span, forgetfulness, distractibility, daydreaming, and difficulty following directions. The third subtype is both of them put together. So you show a little bit of hyperactive symptoms, a little bit of inattentive symptoms. You got them both. So again, people who are assigned male at birth are generally hyperactive. People who are assigned female at birth are generally inattentive. A lot of research that has been done about ADHD actually is primarily male-based. So there is not a whole lot of research on women with ADHD, which is why we often get overlooked or diagnosed later in life, because that inattentive subtype just hasn't been touched on as frequently. So again, to kind of reiterate, AFAB individuals often go underdiagnosed or undiagnosed because they present their symptoms in less obvious ways. The behavior problems are less visible than in attentive ADHD than in hyperactive ADHD. You know, they might be spacey or forgetful or chatty. They overshare things, or, you know, like they're the ones daydreaming in the corner or doodling and not really listening to the lecture. Whereas, you know, a lot of boys, you know, they can be hot-headed or impatient or unable to sit still in class. As individuals with inattentive ADHD, it is common to seek help later in life because we've struggled with ADHD setbacks without knowing that's an issue, and it over time degrades your quality of life. You know, like that's part of the reason why I sought a diagnosis is because, like, I'm getting to a point in my life where it's just like living the same life over and over again. What's wrong with me? Why am I failing? And it turns out it's not me being lazy. You know, it's not because I'm just a failure of a person. It's because I have a neuro-developmental disorder that's held me back, and I have been untreated, so I don't know how to deal with it. And oftentimes, again, I can relate to this, you know, like when these individuals are seeking help later in life because they've been struggling, they get diagnosed with anxiety or depression first. And misdiagnosis is the wrong word for it because, you know, like, yeah, I have depression and anxiety, and I think that it stems out of my ADHD because it went treated for so long. You know, like these symptoms and these actions I've taken, and, you know, just like where I am in my life, it causes anxiety and depression. Anxiety because I never remember anything and I'm always worrying, what am I forgetting? I know I'm forgetting something, you know. And depression because I'm just not doing the things that I want to do. And so it is, you can have co-occurring conditions, ADHD with depression, or ADHD with OCD, with eating disorders, and it's pretty common because it stems off of these, I don't want to use the word downfall, but for lack of a better word, like these downfalls that we're having in our life because of ADHD, and it just causes other mental illnesses to arise, if that makes sense. There are a small list of symptoms for each subtype that I'm going to take you through now. And we're going to go through the inattention subtype first. With both the inattentive and the hyperactive subtype, these specific conditions have to apply. So 6 or more symptoms of either inattention or hyperactivity for children up to 16, and 5 or more for those 17 and older have to be present. Has to be present for at least 6 months to the extent that it is disruptive and inappropriate for the person's developmental level. So with the inattentive type, often fails to give close attention to details or makes careless mistakes with schoolwork, at work, or with other activities. Often has trouble holding attention or tasks or with tasks or play activities. Often does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. Often does not follow through on instructions or fails to finish schoolwork or chores or duties in the workplace. Often has trouble organizing their tasks and activities. Often avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to do tasks that require mental effort over a long period of time, like schoolwork or homework. Often loses things necessary for tasks and activities, such as school materials, pencils, books, tools, wallets, keys, paperwork, glasses, cell phones. Often is easily distracted and often is forgetful in daily activities. So let's just check all the boxes there, shall we? And then with the hyperactive subtype, often they fidget or tap with their hands or feet or squirm in their seats. They often leave their seat in situations where remaining seated is expected, like in auditoriums or during lectures. They often run about or climb in situations where it is not appropriate. Later in life and with adolescents or with adults, may be limited to feeling restless. Often they are unable to play or take part in leisurely activities quietly. They are often feeling as though they're on the go, like they're being driven by a motor. They often talk excessively or blurt out answers before a question has been completed. They often have trouble waiting their turn. And lastly, they often interrupt or intrude on others, like they butt into conversation or try to join games that they were not originally a part of. Now, in addition to your set amount of symptoms that you have to show, depending on your age, there are, I think, 4 more conditions that have to be met. So several of your symptoms, depending on your subtype, have to be present before the age of 12. So it doesn't have to be all 6 or all 5, but just some of them have to be there before you are 12. Several symptoms are present in 2 or more settings, such as work and school, with friends or relatives, or in other activities. And then there has to be clear evidence that the symptoms interfere with or reduce the quality of school, social, or work functions. Those 2 conditions really go hand in hand with like symptoms being present in school and work. You know, like you can't do your college courses, you're not paying attention during your lecture, and then you can't bring you don't bring your homework home and remember to do it. But also at work, you don't pay attention to the instructions, you forget tasks halfway through and you can't bring yourself to finish them. You know, stuff like that, where it's obviously impacting multiple facets of your life. And then lastly, the symptoms cannot be better explained away by another mental disorder, such as an anxiety disorder, mood disorder, personality disorder, etc. And the symptoms cannot only happen during like a schizophrenic or a psychotic break as well. And there are a lot of overlaps with symptoms in mood disorders and ADHD, for example. Like I mentioned in my last video, my psychiatrist was a little on the fence about whether or not I had a mood disorder or if I was just depressed, or something along those lines. And she was still, when we did the ADHD test, still very adamant, like, there's still a chance you might have a mood disorder. Here are, like the steps we're going to take. We're going to put you on stimulants, but if things get worse, let me know. So obviously work with your psychiatrist if getting a diagnosis for this is something that you're planning on doing or interested in doing. But like in mood disorders and anxiety disorders and personality disorders, etc., there are like big tells that you have a mood disorder. For instance, my psychiatrist thought I could have bipolar disorder, but I do not go through hypomanic episodes. I have periods of hyperfixation and hyperfocus, but I have never experienced hypomania, which means I more than likely do not have bipolar disorder. I do have ADHD. So anyway, there's that. And symptoms can change over time. This is not a condition, but just kind of a side note, I guess. As you get older, I think I mentioned earlier, in adults and adolescents with like climbing on walls, instead of actually climbing on walls, you just feel restless. Symptoms change over time. As you age, they just get different. So the presentation may change over time as well. So you might kind of like slide from one subtype into the other. That's not necessarily a bad thing. ADHD, like a lot of disorders, is on a big spectrum. You could have it really mild, or you could have really serious symptoms that like severely impacts your daily life to a debilitating degree. But everybody's a little bit different. Watching and listening to like videos and podcasts the last couple weeks has really been eye-opening for me, because everybody's experience with it is different, but there's still like this kind of base layer that everybody hits. So some people have trouble with their social life and stuff like that when they were a kid, whereas that's not what I really struggled with when I was young. But as I've become an adult, you know, like it's really been hard to maintain relationships, because you know, I think, hey, I need to call that person, hey, I need to check in with that person, I need to text them, etc., and then immediately forget it. And then it's 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh shit, I never texted them. Like, I hope they're doing okay, you know. And I just, as you're an adult, or as you become an adult, like maintaining friendships becomes harder, because you're not seeing these people every single day unless you're working with them, you know. Anyway, I digress. Getting into my experience, and I said I wasn't really going to do that today. So, yeah, that's that on that. Sorry, I was kind of glancing over my notes, and I think that's basically what I wanted to hit as far as symptoms go. Just kind of like a basic overview for you. Don't really know how to wrap this up. So, yeah, that's just kind of a basic overview of symptoms and what ADHD is at its core. It goes so much deeper than that. And I'd love to do a full video on executive functions. And working memory and how that impacts your life, because that's something that I found really eye-opening when I was first kind of juggling with the idea that maybe I do have ADHD. Like maybe this is something that I should be more serious about and should learn more about. The executive functions really just, it blew my mind knowing that I wasn't just failing at life because I was lazy or just, you know, didn't want to do the thing, but it's because my brain was like, no, we're not going to do the thing. Yeah, it's fascinating and eye-opening. So I do want to do a full video on executive functions, but there's 7 to 8 of them depending on what source you're reading from, and I know that'll take up a long time. And because I have ADHD, I don't like to sit and watch 45-minute videos. And unlike my last video, I'm hoping this one's not that long. I'm trying to cut down on the amount of information that I spew onto my unwilling viewers. So, you know, I want to make a series of shorter videos so it's easier for you to commit to the whole video and pay attention. And if you are like me and have ADHD, it's not like I'm going to zone out halfway through this because I really don't care about what she's saying. So yeah, I hope you found this informative or helpful or insightful in any way. This is information that is new to me and really kind of opened my eyes to this disorder that's more than just an inability to pay attention, but is a neuro-developmental disorder that impacts every aspect of people's lives. And there's like between 5 and 8% of the entire world's population that has this. So, you know, it's 1 in, I don't know, something like every 1,000 people has it. And if you think about how many people are on this planet, that's a lot of people. And a lot of people are undiagnosed and struggling with their daily lives like I have for the last 27 years, and just they don't know what's wrong. So hopefully, again, I hope this helped you in some way, or you at least found it informative. Thank you for sticking with me through this. I, again, plan on doing more in-depth videos about ADHD, my experience with that medication, and I do need to do an update video on my Lexapro treatment, so that is coming in the future as well. If you have any questions or comments or concerns or suggestions, I love to hear it as long as it's constructive. Please leave comments below. I love to hear from you. I loved all of the feedback that was messaged to me and all the kindness that you guys had and support for my last video. So thank you so much. You have no idea how nervous I am and how much it means to me that people found it insightful and have just been so overwhelmingly supportive of it. So yeah, I am going to list all of my sources in the description box below, as well as a TED Talk that I recently listened to this week that I found very informative, and I think that you will too. It was fascinating, and it's only like 15 minutes long, so it's probably shorter than this video. It's by Jessica McCabe, and it's called Feeling It Normal, an ADHD Success Story. And she runs the How to ADHD YouTube channel, which is just amazing. So yeah, I'm gonna stop fidgeting in front of a camera now and go make some dinner before I forget to do that for myself, and take my vitamins and relax for the rest of the night. Hopefully this turned out well.